This is Tuvok. Mr. Neelix, in his own special way, has reminded me that I should let you know that you are listening to This Week in Geek with the Twig crew exclusively here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
What are your prime directives?
Serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law.
That's good. You're gonna be a bad motherfucker.
Greetings, citizens of old Detroit. That's right. It is I, Mike the Birdman, and I'm not alone as I partner up with Omni Consumer Products, or maybe the Komatsu Corporation. I'm joined with my compatriot this week.
I'm Aaron Pollyea.
That's right. We are here on Future Imperfect, and you'll notice a distinct lack of Alex, a distinct lack of Steve Megatron Phillips, who will be on, we'll say, extended shore leave from the show. He'll come back from time to time whenever his schedule permits, if we can get a stable subspace signal. So, with that in mind, me and Aaron and Alex will be taking the show in different directions over the next ever. And we're just going to expand it as we have before with different sci-fi properties. And because Birdman is in control for the month of August, I pitched the idea to Aaron to, well, why don't we pick something that we know and love? And Aaron's from Michigan. My favorite childhood hero is also from Michigan. And no, I'm not talking about Ash Williams from Evil Dead. No, I am talking about Alex J. Murphy. You know him by his other name, Robocop. And if you've known me for any length of time, I can endlessly quote Robocop in almost any situation, appropriate or inappropriate. I've seen the movie hundreds of times by now. I own the Arrow video release, which is the best version right now. I think I have the Criterion somewhere. I've got RoboCop 3 on Laserdisc. You might say I'm a fan. And yeah, it's been just one of my things I've loved since I was a kid. And this was the beginning of my interest in firearms in movies. So, Aaron, what about you? What's your history with RoboCop?
I see RoboCop was released in 87. So I was 10, and I am 100% certain I never saw it in the theater. But I can be certain that I saw it on like HBO or Showtime or something like that. Mm-hmm. And what I remember is it's Buckaroo Banzai. Buckaroo Banzai is a cop, and he gets brought back to life effectively. And I thought that was really cool. And there's a big, giant, stompy robot that blows somebody away in the most nightmare-inducing way possible. And those are the things that kind of stuck in my head. And I loved it mainly because of Buckaroo Banzai, Peter Weller in it, and ED 209. That's my history. Like, yeah, I saw it a ton on cable television, but it never really went further than just enjoying the movie itself. I didn't like go out and find toys or collectibles for it. Yeah, I'm from Michigan, and it's in Detroit, or Delta City.
Yeah.
And I recognize the landmarks now that are in it, but yeah, that's about it.
My history with this movie, I can't remember precisely when I saw it. As you mentioned, this movie came out in 87, so I was about 6 years old when I saw this movie, so way too young. And I can't remember whether my parents rented it from the video store or if I saw it on HBO Cinemax or Showtime on cable, because we had satellite at the time, and it was one of those giant 10-foot wide dishes that sat in my backyard. I'm pretty sure it was still there up until my parents' house was pretty much demolished a couple of years ago. And I just fell in love with it. I'd never seen a violent action comedy in a weird sense. I just never had seen that. I'd never seen that brutal level of violence where they gun down Murphy with the gang led by Kurtwood Smith kills him. And then they bring him back, and just the idea of beating death and coming back as this robotic American Jesus was something
Wow.
that my mind couldn't really handle at that age. But it's like, wow, he came back from the grave for revenge, but at the same time, he's also relearning what it means to be a person. Because one of the things that stuck with me as a child was there's a scene in the hallway where Anne and Murphy are passing each other for the first time since he's become Robocop. And she's like, don't you have a name? And he stops and he takes a step back. And it's that step back. And I don't know why that stuck with me. And she looks at him and says, Murphy, it's you. Mm-hmm. And then goes about his way to go get the guy on the motorcycle. And that really, really, really stuck with me. And then I had this toy crossbow as a kid, the one you could buy from like a dollar store, but it was black and it was shaped very similar to the Auto 9 hand pistol, which Robocop uses in the movie. All I did was took out the crossbow part, the actual bow and the bowstring, and this thing looked like an Auto 9. So whenever me and my friends would play guns, like, whoa, Mike, what are you using? Robocop's gun. And
I mean, that is a real gun, by the way. It's just a Beretta 93 that's been heavily modified to make it look bigger.
Yeah, and it's cool, like, when you talk about the weapons for this movie, as Aaron just mentioned, it was based upon the Beretta 93R. They wanted to use a Desert Eagle because at that time it was fairly new and it looked big and intimidating. The problem is when you put that gun in Robocop's hand, it looks really, really, really small.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas with the Beretta, with the larger shroud on the barrel, which is meant to look like a casket, it makes it look a hell of a lot more impressive. Now, you can actually buy replicas of this gun, not that don't fire real bullets, but they can fire airsoft rounds. I've seen paintball guns. So those are pretty cool. I think they're made by Tokyo Maori. If you look around, they're not cheap. And gas blowback is your friend, or high power electric. If you're going to buy these, don't buy the spring versions. They look cool, but that's about it.
I don't see why you wouldn't be able to just, if you owned a Beretta 93R, why you couldn't just 3D print the shroud and things like that and put
somebody
it on there.
Has to.
Yeah,
somebody has.
I'm sure it's possible, modifying. Anyone out there that's listening, modifying firearms is something for professionals. Don't try that at home.
Yeah.
But I'm sure somebody could do it.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard. And the scenes with him firing that gun are amazing. The muzzle flash off of it.
Oh, yeah. And that distinctive rattle of the gun sound is so iconic.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Like, out of the 1980s, one of the most iconic sounds I associate with the 80s is the sound of the proton pack powering up, not firing, but powering up, the pulse rifle from Aliens, Robocop's gun, and specifically when it comes out of the holster, then it firing, and then probably the DeLorean's
the wind up of it.
Yeah,
I was going to say the time circuit's powering up.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Those are what I associate with the 80s if I had to define it in sound.
And can I add something to your description of the movie overall? You said you never saw something that was this kind of dark comedy. As a kid, I never took it as a comedy. It's really weird. I never saw any of the humor in it because it just was so dark to me at that time that this was just kind of a dark, gritty crime drama in a way that had some sci-fi elements to it. And all of the comedy really passed me by, or at least it didn't matter to me at all. And watching it now, I can go back and really laugh at the subversive stuff that's in it. But at 10 years old, what 10-year-old is really going to get all the dark humor in it?
For me, it was the commercials that I found really funny. And then just a lot of the one-liners. Like, I thought Kurtwood Smith was hilarious. There's one scene that always got me because it was so ridiculous, and I wonder if it was improv. They're in the cocaine factory, and he drums his hands on the table. He's like, "Line of Cubs are playing tonight," and it's just so ridiculous. It just got me rolling. Or when he gets into the police station after RoboCop beats the shit out of him, "Where's my fucking phone call?" Just
Yeah.
It's the cadence on that line I love. But yeah, like, I got so into it, and then I discovered the toys, which came out around RoboCop 2, I want to say, but they were called RoboCop and the Ultra Police, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. But yeah, the first movie, it's been one of those things that the director Paul Verhoeven initially looked at it as trash. Then I think his wife or somebody convinced him to take another look at it. And then, as I used in my description, he called it the American Jesus with a gun. And as I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate the levels, as you mentioned, of subversiveness, dark humor, political commentary. In essence, I would call this my first cyberpunk movie that I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah, and I was about to say, because I never saw Blade Runner till I was in high school. I knew what cyberpunk was because I read like Neuromancer in grade 10 and I played Shadowrun. But RoboCop was near future without being laser gunny, Star Trekky. And that's the type of fiction that I always gravitate towards. That's why I like Aliens. It's sci-fi, but it's just far enough out where you could see this happening within 100, 200 years.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Trek, they're teleporting people across light years.
Sure. You say cyberpunk, and not obviously, I should say that I saw Blade Runner far before this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like the Coke and Pan Am ads in Blade Runner and seeing that very vividly, even very early in grade school. But this same year that RoboCop came out, another movie that you can argue is cyberpunk, just not as well known, as Cherry 2000.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, because I adore that film. I really love that film. That's more of a comedy to me than RoboCop, but it's not as dark, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's cyberpunk.
Yeah, like, it's one of those movie genres that's starting to get more recognition, because when the Matrix hit in like 1999, that was considered the cyberpunk masterpiece, and arguably that's a pretty hard position to go against. Yeah. But we're starting to see more cyberpunk movies. We're starting to see more cyberpunk games. But when this movie came out, obviously they had to cut some stuff, like the scene where the enforcement droid series 209 blows away Mr. Kenny. That's a lot more vivid in the X-rated cut.
Oh, I love that scene so much, though.
God.
Now I love it. I think it's hilarious. But as a kid, that's, oh my God, Edie is so awesome.
There's one part in that scene that I didn't get till I was in high school. Mm-hmm. But he's shooting the guy, he's dead, the camera pulls back, the guns are smoking, and you just hear this gear winding down and just screeching to a halt.
Yeah,
and then they start talking. And the sound design in these movies is honestly really, really damn good. The guy who did the music for this was Basil Pompadourus or something like that. I think that's his name.
Okay.
And he has the RoboCop theme is, again, if I had to define the 80s in like 5 musical scores, Ghostbusters, and not just the Ghostbusters, but
the whole soundtrack. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I would do Empire Strikes Back, Imperial March, Back to the Future main theme, RoboCop March, and Batman's 1989 theme.
Ooh.
I had to define the 80s in 5 themes. Honorable mention to Indiana Jones.
See, if it was a soundtrack, I'd have to throw in the whole Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure soundtrack.
Good call.
That's not one that most people think about, but I adore that soundtrack. It is, yeah, it's something else.
I even didn't mention The Terminator by Brad Fidel, I think is his name.
Oh,
yeah.
dude, yeah, that's immediately recognizable in your head. You say Terminator theme, and I'm like, dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
like, right away.
Like that's something sci-fi I felt did more so than some comedies and dramas that came out, or at least in my limited experience of those genres at the time. I can identify more sci-fi themes from the 80s than almost any other decade. And it just, soundtracks back then sounded different than they do now. Like, for example, this movie sounds different than, say, I think the composer Steve Jablonsky for the Transformers movies. They have a very distinct sound too. Obviously, RoboCop's a different movie, but there's just, it's the way that things are composed. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, even the score for the new RoboCop movie, it's so unmemorable as to basically you don't remember a goddamn thing. But when you say RoboCop theme, you think of that heroic RoboCop march. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, so movie was tremendously well received by critics and fans. People loved it, toys, whatever. The second movie, directed by Ivan Kershner, the guy who did Empire Strikes Back, which I always thought was really fucking weird, for a director's choice. They went in a different direction. They leaned more into the humor this time round, but they got like a bigger budget. RoboCop suit looked different now. It was more of a bluish color as opposed to the steel from the first one. Although I think actor Peter Weller said this suit was a lot more easier to move around in and do all the stuff that he had to do.
Can I say I'm honestly surprised they got Peter Weller back?
Yeah, because he went through hell for this, because he had to train at one point he trained with like a mime to learn how to move properly. Mm-hmm. And then when they put him in the suit, everything he learned didn't work. So he had to relearn it all, which that is commitment. Yeah. And it took so long to get into the armor. You couldn't sit down. You couldn't go to the bathroom. Like, if you watch some of the shots where you see most of RoboCop, you see from the waist up at times, or if you see him in full costume, you don't see it as much as you might think in that movie. But I always found that really impressive that he would go through all of that for a movie role. And that's why Peter Weller is one of my heroes. The fact that you suffered so much for such a goofy concept, but you gave it everything you had. And there's a scene in RoboCop 2 that really gets me, where he's talking to his wife, or Alex's wife, before he passed away. And they're talking, is this the face of your husband? And she's like, yes. And he's like, touch it. And she does. And like, it's cold. And he says, that's because your husband is dead. I don't know you. And he walks away. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good moment for Peter Weller. Like, just, he has to get away from his family. He has to separate himself from that life, or it's going to tear her apart. And I think he recognizes that. And then obviously the movie takes a goofier turn when Dr. Fax, I think her name is, it puts all these goofy commands into him from like a committee and like the PTA. They're like, could he be more nice? Is there anything he could do about the environment? I don't want to hear fucking recycling tips from RoboCop. Though it would be interesting. Yeah. And the movie centers around, there's this master criminal known as Kane, and there's a street drug called Nuke. And OCP is moving forward with Delta City. The problem is they're running out of money. They are bankrupt. OCP's in trouble. Detroit's in trouble. And they have to go to a drug lord who says, oh, I'll front you the money. But
the government asking drug lords for money,
which, awesome. You know what? It wouldn't surprise me in 2021. It really wouldn't.
I mean, there are taxes from medical marijuana, or legalized marijuana. So I guess sort of.
There you go. We are slowly working ourselves into the RoboCop future.
God help us.
And one of the things that stuck out about this movie is obviously there's more stunt work because RoboCop can now jump. He can do more things. He rides a motorcycle fighting a armored car, which is pretty cool. And RoboCop 2's design was this giant hulking mech with like a battering ram, a taser.
Isn't it like Robocane or something? That's what they call it.
Yeah, they call him Robocane. He's supposed to be RoboCop 2. And it's cool because they figure they can control a drug addict we'll supply him with this drug nuke because Kane was the leader of the nuke cult, and they offer him drugs, say, hey, you do what we want, we'll give you a giant canister, you can get high all day. And he's like, okay, I'll work with you to get the drugs. And then eventually he revolts against them when they tease him with a nuke canister at a press conference. Then RoboCop shows up with the Cobra assault cannon, which is literally just a Barrett sniper rifle. Either way, you're not going to have a good day if this thing hits you. And there's a fight. RoboCop rips out RoboCane's brain and smashes it on the pavement. Now, I've got a weird memory with this movie, and this shows how much of a wuss I was when this movie first came out. So, there's a scene in this movie where Kane is operated on. Dr. Fax pulls his life support and he dies. Then they grab saws and cut open the top of Kane's head and extract his brain and put it in a jar. Now there's a scene where they expose the brain and you can see it after they cut off the top of his head. There's this sickening little sound that happens. So my 11-year-old self, I was born in 81, so whatever. We'll say I'm 10 or 11. I'm drinking a big glass of water and eating a big handful of ketchup chips.
Oh, man.
You can guess what happened next.
You vomited?
Oh, yeah. That sound when they cut off the top of his head, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
Wow.
It was so gross.
In this movie, the thing that I remember the most isn't that. It's the tests with like the other like replacement RoboCop Mark II. And like one of them rips its head off and you see its like skull, it's like bloody skull and like
it screams.
And it screams. I'm like, okay, yeah, that sticks with you.
Oh yeah. There's something I love about that scene because it's so intentionally funny. They have this dramatic music swell. Now presenting RoboCop 2, and this chunky looking guy comes out. He flashes a TV screen, looks back and forth, shoots the scientist, then shoots himself. And then his sirens go off as his body's just standing there. Then screaming skeleton guy. And as that falls over, the camera cuts back to the old man, and you just hear the sound of like a paint can and some other shit sputtering on the floor and stuff just clanging. It's something out of a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon. But again, sound design carries that moment because it's so clever. And with the dramatic music and the black guy Johnson rubbing his arm because he was the one who got shot. There's just so much in that scene that works. And a lot of people don't talk about RoboCop 2. They always talk about the first one and the third one. And the third one, not for good reasons, though I disagree. I watched it today. It's not as bad as I remember.
See, I do like RoboCop 2. I honestly feel that RoboCop 1 and 2 fit together very well.
Yes.
But RoboCop 3, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
There are parts of it that work. I mean, when you mention RoboCop 1 and 2, they're pushing the narrative forward. Murphy still knows who he is. He's dealing with the trauma of rediscovering who he is. Him and Anne are obviously better friends now. They're full friends now. And you just see RoboCop is a person. He's not a piece of tech, although OCP considers him about as useful as a stapler, but he's good for the PR budget, so they're willing to keep him online as long as they can, but also at the same time, when he becomes too much trouble, they're like, sell them for scrap. But anyway, yeah, there's just some really good moments in this movie, although I don't remember much of the music from this one. I know it was done by a different composer because I know Basil comes back for the third one. But other than that, I don't remember a lot of merchandise around this. There was a terrible video game for the NES, but because I was young and stupid, I loved it. Never beat it. Got to the final Kane boss and got my ass kicked. Because that's the game where I used to describe it to my friends as Robocop has butter on his feet. Because when you jump on a platform, you slide for some really bizarre reason. And the same game was essentially a reskin from the same developer. I think it was Ocean Entertainment did it. And it's essentially the Darkman video game, if I remember that right. So don't quote me on that. But yeah, Robocop 2 was also one of my first theatrical posters I ever owned. I actually went out of my way when I was in college and got a huge theatrical one sheet for it, and it's the one where you see Kane standing, you see his shadow in Robocop's visor, and I also had an original video store rental where he's busting out of the wall. So, weird piece of trivia for Robocop 2. WCW, the World Championship Wrestling, had a promotion in that summer. I can't remember what the event was called, but it was something in the Capital Combat or something, where Robocop had to rescue Sting from the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse by busting him out of a cage.
Oh man, I hope they didn't get Peter Weller for that.
Oh, I hope not. Rumor was they were going to, and I remember hearing this, but I've never. I think I heard it referenced in a. I think I saw it referenced in a book or on a YouTube video. I think it was either during the promotion for the original or the second one. They had guys in Robocop suits walking around in malls all over America. My little self would have lost his mind if he saw Robocop. Because
that's a pretty cool costume, but yeah, I wouldn't have reacted that way.
I would have, just because oh my God, you're real. It would have been so cool. So Robocop 3. First Robocop movie I ever saw in theaters because it wasn't rated R. So this came out in 93, though it was filmed not too long after Robocop 2, but it was shelved for a while. Same guy who directed this directed Monster Squad in Night of the Creeps. And oddly enough, has a Star Trek connection. I think he's directed some episodes of Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So Fred Decker,
yeah.
Love this guy. Really thinks he deserves another shot at Hollywood. But they handed him the keys to the Robocop franchise. And this is where things take an interesting turn. So Peter Weller is gone. He was off filming Naked Lunch. So Robert John Burke, who I think is on I think he was on Law & Order SVU, and he was also on Rescue Me, I think, plays the new version of Robocop. And all things considered, actually does a pretty good job. I actually like every actor who's played Robocop so far. I can't find a bad one. Maybe the remake guy, but for different reasons. So continuing the meta plot that began all the way back in Robocop 1, where Delta City, they were talking about it, Delta City in Robocop 2 is now actively being developed. They just need money for it. Robocop 3, OCP's in trouble because of Delta City. They're so far behind schedule. If they don't build Delta City or start breaking ground by midnight on a certain day, they default on their loan. And that's why they have a Japanese corporation come in to try and bail them out of the deep shit they're in. Long gone is the chairman. Was it Ronnie Cox? Was it?
Yeah, they had the same guy playing it in both first movies.
Yeah, and then Rip Torn replaces him. No, is it Rip Torn? Yeah, Rip Taylor is a different guy playing the chairman here, along with one of the guys from the West Wing, and Johnson comes back. So the movie centers around a resistance group centered in a real. Is this place real? Is Cadillac Heights real?
Cadillac Heights does not sound. I mean, there's a place called Cadillac.
Okay, so it's centered in this Detroit neighborhood where OCP is like, get out, we sold the land, here's your notice of eviction. And they have these troopers called rehabilitation officers who basically look like Nazis, and they're nicknamed rehabs. And there's this huge PR campaign for Delta City. They're also saying, hey, the rehab officers are here to help you, we'll help you move your stuff, you will have plenty of notice, whatever. It's quite the opposite of that. So it follows a young family who gets their house demolished literally while the little girl's in bed. Turns out she's a big fan of Robocop, and for some reason, every girl in the 1990s was a computer genius hacker. Notable examples, this movie, the Jurassic Park movie, and I guess to a lesser extent, the movie Hackers with Angelina Jolie, though. Anyway.
Oh, Hackers is good. And yeah, there is a Cadillac Heights neighborhood in Detroit, but it's very small and it's very low income.
Yeah. So the rehab officers come in there, they try and evict these people. They start a resistance group, and obviously OCP don't like that. So, eventually there's a showdown where Robocop and Ann Lewis go to a church to clear it out because they think, hey, these people are terrorists, they're bad guys. And they find out it's women, children, old people who aren't fighting. So the rehabs come outside, say, look, either you bring them out or we're going through you to go get them. And Ann's like, yeah, try it. And the guy who leads the rehabs, Paul McDaggett's like, I don't have a problem shooting through you. Are you sure? She's like, yeah, okay. And he blows her away. And then Robocop takes a grenade to the chest and buys them a little bit of time. Ann Lewis dies, saying, get them for me, Murphy. And then Robocop joins the resistance group. Meanwhile, there's a scientist who works for OCP and the cops called Dr. Lazarus. That's a right little bit on the nose, played by Jill Hennessy, which is the first movie I ever saw her in. And then she went on to do Law and Order for a number of years. She eventually works up with the resistance group, fixes Robocop, and then the company that took over OCP, this Japanese corporation, sends over their own robotic dude named Otomo, who's basically, think of like Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe. He's a ninja. And he has a sword and is really powerful. But I always felt the Otomo robots never lived up to their potential. They just wanted a Japanese guy with a sword. Like, he doesn't do anything cool.
See, I remember, I didn't watch RoboCop 3 for this review. I've watched it a few times. I think I watched it maybe a year ago. And I remember the Japanese robots being really ineffectual. Like, they just didn't seem to do anything that they were really designed to be. They were very fragile. Yeah, that was my take from it. Am I wrong?
I don't think so. Like, I guess I looked at, this is something that I happened upon today, and you're going to love to how I came to this conclusion, and somebody out there in the audience is going to laugh. So I took some edibles this afternoon for pain, and I'm watching RoboCop 3, which I guess is the best way to watch this movie. And I realized there's an interesting parallel between RoboCop's design and Otomo's. RoboCop is big, bulky, meant to inspire fear, whereas the Japanese design Otomo is slick, sleek, and discreet. You would pass an Otomo on the street and never know it. RoboCop, you're going to hear him coming a block away. And I always thought that was interesting, but I'm sad it never lived up to the potential of, I'm a kick-ass Japanese robot. He does 3 flips and does like 4 sword strikes, and that's the entire fight with Otomo. And then 2 of them show up, one with a fucked up face and another one, and they're helping McDaggett take over OCP because he's made a deal with the Japanese to screw up the plan or make sure that Detroit gets whatever. Basically, he wants the bad guys to win. there's a nuke that goes off at OCP Tower. Everybody dies except the chairman lives. Johnson lives somehow, but he's at the Detroit Police Department yelling at them for quitting. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. All the cops walk off the job because the rehabs go down to the police station and say, oh, by the way, I need 50 of your guys in body armor in 20 minutes. We're going to go clear out Cadillac Heights. And the cops are like, fuck that. So Reed, who's been in all three movies, says no. And Johnson says to him something along the lines of, well, you're getting awfully close to retirement. Think of your retirement benefits. Think of your family. What are you going to tell them if you walk out of here? And he says something like, well, I'm going to have to go home and face them now, aren't I? And he walks out and he throws down his badge. Then everybody else does it. And then McDaggett sees a splatterpunk, who are these random gang members, who is being arrested, but all the cops walked out. And he's like, hey, how would you and your friends like a job? So he arms them with all these ridiculous assault weapons, which I'll talk about the guns with this movie a little bit afterwards. And then there's a battle in Cadillac Heights. Robocop now has a jetpack all of a sudden and a gun arm in this movie. And then, like I said, the top of OCP Tower blows up. The Japanese businessman who took over OCP, I think he realizes, well, I'm not going to get what I want. I'm going to cut my losses and leave. So he bows to Robocop. Robocop acknowledges him. The chairman for OCP comes down and says, hey, what do they call you? They call you Murphy, don't they? And he's like, well, my friends call me Murphy, but you can call me, dramatic silence, Robocop.
Yeah.
Like, this movie meant for kids because the design of the character, the fact that he's a robot fighting crime, they made a cartoon out of this produced by Marvel, which actually has a connection to the X-Men series.
Oh, that's weird.
I found this out. Supposedly, they cut money from the Robocop series to produce the pilot for the X-Men Pride of the X-Men cartoon, if I'm remembering this trivia right, which I always thought was kind of cool. Sad that the Robocop Marvel series never lasted more than 12 episodes, but there are some interesting things in there. He does fight a guy in a Robocop 2 suit, kind of, and that's the only episode of the cartoon I ever had as a kid, because I found it at a Walmart for $1. And
you bought that for $1?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I literally did. Oh my God. Yeah. So I bought it for $1, and the episode was called The Man in the Iron Suit. So there's this evil doctor named Dr. McNamara. So there's a Vietnam reference in there, and he's working on his Ed 260, because for some reason the 209 series fails. Although it's funny, they show the Ed 260 units doing simple things like helping people cross the street and doing traffic duty, and they're massively screwing it up.
I mean, they're ED. I know. Okay. I mean, I don't know what the ED 260s look like. Are they giant like the 209s?
They're giant like the 209s with 2 legs and 2 arms that have the big
chain
laser guns. Yeah, chain guns, and they're blue now, and they're just ludicrously stupid. Which I always thought that was a great bit of humor through all the movies. The Ed 209s are dumb as shit. They're powerful, but they're really stupid.
Yeah, no, I love ED 209 from the first movie. I mean, they pop up in the third one, right? Like, am I misremembering again?
Yeah, the little girl hacks into Ed 209 at the police armory at the beginning of the movie, and she programs him to be loyal as a puppy, in his own words, and then she programs him to shoot at the security concepts officers that show up, and Ed 209 says in his voice, "Eat lead, suckers," and he starts shooting up the cars. Nobody dies, and so Robocop
human
3,
casualties 0.0.
Yeah, exactly. He pulls a Terminator 2, and Robocop 3, it's got a sense of humor. One of my favorite scenes in it, it's so goofy and it's so dumb. Robocop driving a pimp car is funny, no matter how you slice it. Sure. There's just some great one-liners in here from some of the other characters. And I think Rip Torn is surprisingly funny in what he's given. And like I said, Robert John Burke, who plays Robo, I think was a pretty good replacement for Peter Weller, but he is no Peter Weller. Robert John Burke plays the action RoboCop. If you want the emotional RoboCop, you got to go to Peter Weller. Though this wasn't the end of the RoboCop franchise, not by any stretch of the imagination. So after this, in Canada, which is where I'm from, they filmed a RoboCop television show, and it ran for one or two seasons. Not very high budget, but it did have, I think it was like $1 million per episode, but they gave RoboCop different powers. He now had non-lethal options in his other leg. He also could reload his gun in different ways. There was even subtle design changes to the costume. Like, you know how RoboCop has that black kind of neck guard?
Yeah.
They would change how that would get on and off. Stuff like that when he would remove his helmet. And there's also a cybernetic ghost who lives in the system because reasons.
Why not?
Why not? There's a spunky little kid. The old man from OCP plays more like an idiot, well-meaning old man as opposed to some evil genius. And it's funnier because it's meant to attract a younger audience. But the fact that it was RoboCop, that's cool. There was another cartoon show called Alpha Commando, which ran for one season. No significant voice talent, although Langley from the X-Files was in it. So Dean Haglund was one of the scientists in it. So that's why I know it, because I'm a huge X-Files nerd. And then the RoboCop things was quiet. There was an Xbox game that came out in the early 2000s. It's fucking terrible. Then the RoboCop remake was teased for a really, really, really long time. And it came out, and I think it was done by the same guy who directed The Raid. And it was, the thing is, it's so forgettable. Like, I can remember the design of the RoboCop suit, because the company a number of years ago was very generous to send me the toys for the movie. But when he first gets the RoboCop suit, he's in the steel and it looks really good. And then they make him tactical black because at that time, everything wanted to look like Batman and Iron Man, because this came out during the middle of Marvel Phase 2 and after The Dark Knight Returns. So their design was locked in. And Samuel L. Jackson's in it. Michael Keaton's in it, I think. And Joel Kinnaman, who plays Alex Murphy, it's weird because the way their RoboCop lives is he's a spinal column, a head, and a hand, and everything else is all robotic, and they can control him by turning off his emotions and feeding him more information. So it becomes more like a militarized drone, I guess.
Why would you keep a hand? Because that means you need to keep like a whole network of,
blood vessels.
Yeah, blood vessels and nerve impulses going all the way down to this one hand that's just kind of peripheral.
It was weird because I think they explained it in the movie as it was a way to anchor him to his humanity with a sense of touch or something. It was something really weird.
See, I didn't watch the remake. I will fully admit I did not go to see it because I thought this is a movie that does not need to be remade, and it's not going to have the subversive qualities that the original had.
Yeah,
because no one gets that anymore. Most people are just going to remember RoboCop for being ultra violent.
Yeah, like it's not a terrible remake. It's not offensive, but it's pointless ultimately. And that's really unfortunate because it had a really good cast in it. They wanted Sam Jackson to play this Bill Maher, Alex Jones type character in it, to be like the new kind of media break, and pretty sure Sam Jackson just did it for a fucking paycheck.
Sure. And
it's forgettable. The toys were kind of cool because in this they gave RoboCop, I can't remember whether he had dual pistols or just one, but his Auto 9 wasn't the same as it was in the other movies. This was like a taser and some other shit. It's not very cool looking. Like when he's in the steel suit, when he first becomes Robocop, he looks cool. Plus he can jump around and shit. I like how his visor retracts. Like I like the look of 2014 Robocop, but I don't like the story that it tells. I don't like the updates to Ed 209. It looks like something out of Metal Gear Solid 4. It looks literally like the bosses from Metal Gear Solid 4. You don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Somebody out there will know. They look like geckos. And I don't know. There's just something, I wanted to love it so badly that I went out, I got the toys, I reviewed them, the toys were fine, but I didn't feel the love for the movie, and that hurt. And there's been talk for years that we're going to get a RoboCop Returns. Peter Weller, I think, has said at one point he would come back to do it. I think even Paul Verhoeven said he would come back. Or there's been talk about it for years. And I remember this is something I know we talked about on the Nerd News with Alex. There was talk of a RoboCop TV show that doesn't feature RoboCop. It would follow a young Dick Jones.
All right.
Which is kind of in the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. And I had an idea on how it could work. So let's start when Dick Jones, or in this case, we're just going to call him Richard. When Richard is a young executive, he's middle management at OCP. He's got a wife, he's got a family, and he has an interest in artificial intelligence and cybernetics. Because let's say his son or his wife, daughter, whoever, somebody close to his family is dying and he wants to keep them alive somehow. So by researching artificial intelligence, maybe I can preserve life after death. Let's say family member, friend, whoever gets terribly injured, they have to start putting more effort into cybernetics research. They have to look at full body prothesis or whatever it is. Sorry, I can't speak today. And maybe you see why he is the way he is, because everything got taken away from him, and because he wasn't aggressive enough, maybe Bob Morton's father, or maybe Bob Morton himself coming up, made him look like an asshole so many times and he never knew it, or Bob Morton didn't care, and Security Concepts tanked a bunch of these projects. Maybe the reason in RoboCop 1 why he's so mad about the Ed 209 project falling through, because he found a cost-saving measure that maybe he was embezzling money to go do something for himself, or maybe make himself rich if now he's evil or something. But there could be reasons to layer it in there, and you could see how Detroit and the cops got to be the way it was. You could see the Bodiger gang maybe causing trouble in old Detroit. Maybe there's a reason why Dick Jones just happens to know this guy. Stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff here to explore. But again, the problem is calling it RoboCop Dick Jones.
See, I wouldn't do a prequel like that. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, let's do something new with RoboCop," I'd say no. First of all, that would be my first response, because I think it's already been done. But if you're going to do something with it, what you want to do is take the universe forward. You either want to make the world more dystopian, like there is no more United States, make it more cyberpunk, make it kind of like Shadowrun, in that the United States has shattered. There's been more balkanization across the world. And now, obviously there's lots more military conflict and people are coming back injured and more cybernetics are being used. And yeah, there was this old RoboCop idea that was in Detroit, and you get this company bringing back the idea of RoboCop and not using it as RoboCop, but using it as soldiers, as forcibly modifying their troopers.
Mm-hmm.
And you start getting you can put together a lot of ideas with, what's the morality behind it? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you just like sending these wounded soldiers home? And why are you having to like replace everything with that's been injured immediately with cybernetics and throwing them back onto the front line? Why is there the need for this? Is there too much trouble back home? Are there too many problems with getting proper soldiers? Maybe there's malnutrition and all that's happened, and the general populace is just not able to fight any longer. There's a lot of weird ideas that you can throw out there, but yeah, I would move it further into the future. I'd move it into like the 2070s, the 2080s.
Yeah, because one thing about RoboCop, and I was thinking about this while I was watching it today, the movie's very pro-police. Obviously, it wants to be like cops in the 80s and 90s were always the good guys. You never saw them as a bad guy, or if you did, it was remarkably rare. I think, anyway. You'd see the odd corrupt cops, but as a whole, they're there to serve, protect, blah, 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 blah. How do you make this movie 2021? Because you look at the way the police are now viewed, and it's been a difficult year in civil rights and everything else, and that's putting it mildly. How does RoboCop remain relevant in 2021? Because looking at the system he represents, but his prime directives speak above that. Like, it's to to protect the innocent, serve the public trust, uphold the law. But then there's always that sneaky fourth directive that's usually you shall not harm the hand that feeds you, basically.
Yeah, and there's always ways that you can hack RoboCop to make him forget his morality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no way you could make RoboCop not be somewhat problematic in the modern age, because I mean, it represents a militarization of the police departments of especially the United States, where cops are not seen as serving and protecting many times, and that they are just using force first.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make the argument in all these films that RoboCop isn't using force first, that he's only using it in situations where he can, or he should be. But the fact is that RoboCop's so heavily armored, he could just walk up to perpetrators and take all the fire that they want to pour at him, and he can just knock them out.
And he only ever does that twice, to my recollection, maybe 3 times. In the first movie, he punches through the wall, then punches the guy out the second wall, which probably killed him. And then there's the guy in the liquor store who RoboCop bends the barrel of his gun. When he runs away, he clotheslines them and he goes flying into the cooler.
That probably killed him.
Yeah, or at least put him in the hospital for a good number of months.
Because, I mean, RoboCop's not supposed to be Judge Dredd, right?
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of the American judicial system is that, if you're guilty, you're found guilty in a court of law, not on the street at the end of RoboCop's gun.
Yeah, and and they actually make specific mention of this. His memory is admissible as evidence. So RoboCop was the precursor to body cams.
Yeah,
which is really interesting, because there's so much storytelling potential there. And they kind of use it in this, where RoboCop plays back the recording of Dick Jones saying, I had to kill Bob Morton because he made a mistake. Stuff like that, like using video evidence. And in the 80s, that was something you didn't really think about. Like, you might see, a gas station might catch something, or a security camera from like a liquor store, but this was like full video of somebody admitting to a crime. And you think about how that's applied now with Zoom chats and Skype and Facebook messaging.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many ways to incriminate yourself. Like, a modern RoboCop would be hard to do, especially in this political climate. Impossible? No. In comic book form, you could tell some really interesting stories there. And there's been a number of comic books over the years, some based on Frank Miller's original screenplay for RoboCop 2, which I think is called Last Stand. I know there's one called RoboCop 2, or Frank Miller's RoboCop 2. The big elephant in the room, but we talked about this a little bit, I think, on Twig Sunday Funnies, was RoboCop versus the Terminator. If not, it was one of the biggest crossovers. It was anticipated, so Dark Horse did it. It's worth a read. It's kind of cheesy. The video games are fantastic. If you're going to play either version of the video game, the version on the Genesis is more violent and more fun, but the version on the Super Nintendo looks and sounds better. So pick your poison. I think it's one of those movies and franchises that I think says a lot about where we don't want to end up going. Especially the more I watch RoboCop, the more sad I get, because I'm like, we're privatizing everything. As you mentioned, the militarization of the cops. I remember a couple years ago when the Ferguson riots were happening, and I saw how heavily armed the police were. I'm like, what the hell do the police in Missouri need with an armored vehicle? Stuff. I mean, like
every police department has those here in the United States.
That's insane. We've got guys with shotguns and maybe M16s, not fully armored war vehicles. And that's RoboCop's future is that. I mean, we look at Media Break. That's a biased news source that comes across as infotainment, where in the first movie, they're like, and the Star Wars weapons platform misfired today, killing 700 people and the former president. Now back to you, Casey Wong. And it's so over the top ridiculous. And that's your Fox Newses. That's your Twitter conversations. That's TikTok. It's ridiculous. And this movie, viewed through the lens of today, we're really fucking close to some of this stuff. Even some of the RoboCop cybernetics and stuff, we don't have fully functional versions of those, but we do have computers that can be implanted. There's the ability with bionic eyes to technically see now.
Yeah.
Thermographics have been around for God knows how long. There are weapons that can have thermographic scopes mounted to them. One thing I found out today while I was researching this, in RoboCop 2, the kid Hobb has a foldable gun. And
sure,
I remember
that's a real thing, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, as a kid, I'm thinking, there's no fucking way that's real. So I found out the gun is called the UC-10 or the U9, and it stands for undercover 9mm. And the guy whose video I watched today said there's less than 100 of these guns available to buy in the United States. The video I watched says, oh, by the way, but this one's for sale if you want it. And he goes into detail and says, so in the 80s, this gun was nicknamed the portable radio gun because it looked like a portable radio. And he's like, well, that wouldn't work today. So here's what you do. You get a couple of stickers that look like USB ports, and you put a couple of other stickers on it, and it looks like a portable hard drive.
Yeah, that's not good.
That is terrifying in 2021. Because think about that. You could walk through somewhere and say, what's that? It's a hard drive. Oh, okay. And no one's going to give you shit for it. They might notice, why is it so heavy? Because it's old. It's spinning disks. What do you want? It's not a solid state drive. Like, it's... But yeah.
It's terrifying. Like that, any gun like that where you can just kind of hide it in plain sight.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
But I guess as we start to kind of wrap things up here, I'm glad these movies exist because it opened my eyes at such a young age to things I never really thought about. I mean, like I said, I saw this at 6 years old. I saw somebody die in this movie and then come back from the dead. And that was some interesting philosophical questions for me at that age, because even back then I have an existential dread of death. And it spurned me to learn more about movie firearms and props, because my friend Liam, who would join the military a number of years later when we were in high school, he had this wonderful giant book of firearms, and we were looking through it, identifying guns from different movies and identifying guns from different TV shows. And I remember when he showed me the Beretta 93R, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's RoboCop's gun. And then he showed me the Mauser machine pistol, and thinking, that's Han Solo's gun. Then he showed me the Sten gun, which is, oh, that's a Stormtrooper blaster. Stuff like that. And I just thought that was really cool. And it made me look at filmmaking Paul Verhoeven is one of the first directors whose names I knew as a film nerd. I mean, when I was growing up, everybody knows George Lucas, Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, James Cameron. Paul Verhoeven was one of those names that I went out of my way to learn. And even growing up, when I found out Ivan Kershner, it took me years to put two and two together. Like, Empire Strikes Back to this, and I think that was Ivan Kershner's last movie he directed. I'm not sure. And then Fred Decker, again, I know where this guy came from. I know his work. I'm going to love it. And I used to be a hardcore RoboCop 3 hater, but even watching it today, I see where he wanted to go. I like that his humor's here, just maybe not the right franchise for him to be handed so young into his career.
You know, I don't hate RoboCop 3 by any means. It has things in it that are really good. I mean, the death of Anne Lewis in it really stands out to me. I was kind of expecting that in RoboCop 2 when I saw her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There are some pretty awful parts to RoboCop 3 that are, you know, you're just like, well, really, come on. But yeah, like you said, I can also see where they were trying to go with it. There's potential in it. It's not perfectly done by any means.
Yeah. And then one of the other things I wanted to mention, because I did mention I was going to talk about this later, is RoboCop 3 has some of the most eclectic guns used in it I've ever seen. I found out there's a grenade launcher that he's using at one point where he's being chased in the pimp car. I found out that gun in real life does not fire high explosives. It only fires less than lethal projectiles.
What, the 37 millimeter?
Yeah. I'm
launcher?
thinking,
yeah.
like, I didn't know that. And then I found...
It's the same... Well, at least I think it's the same grenade launcher that is used in Terminator 2.
I think so. And I think... oh, yeah. Speaking of that, director and writer Shane Black has an uncredited cameo in this movie. He's one of the cops from the splatterpunk scene in the beginning holding the shotgun. He was in Predator, wielding a grenade launcher. And there's even a really weird gun. I love guns that have weird magazines. It's this weird top-loaded hand pistol, and I can't remember what it is, but if you go to the Internet Movie Firearms database, you can see it. And there's like Russian AKs in the police armory. It's cool. I found out that scene was filmed, I think, at the Armorers, so they didn't have to take the guns off the racks or something like that. And I'm thinking, okay, that's kind of cool, because you see all these different things. You see different like things that are like a street sweeper shotgun but aren't. You see one of the most famous movie shotguns is the Spaz 12. I also found out RoboCop 2 was the first movie to feature a Sig Sauer. At the time, it was a new model. I think it was like the 226 or something, because it came out in 91, and so did RoboCop 2. And it was the first movie likely at that time. At least that's what it said on the Firearms Database wiki. Now, in the years since, there's been some really good merch to come out from this stuff. NECA and McFarlane have both done toys for the various series. There's Mini-Mates, Funko Pops, even Hot Toys, which is a premium line of action figures, has a RoboCop, and I never see them go for anything less than $600 or $700 US. So they're expensive. There's even a version that has the RoboCop chair with multiple heads, faces, arms, and everything, and all the accessories. There's ones with his jetpacks. There's RoboCop versus the Terminator toys. There was some media we didn't mention. There was the RoboCop Prime Directives TV movies that came out in the early 2000s. They made 4 of them. There was Dark Justice. What the fuck are they?
Dark Justice, Meltdown, Resurrection, and Crash and Burn.
Yeah, which feature an interesting cast. One of the wife of Jack Bauer from 24 plays a computer hacker in it. They fight a guy called Bone Machine. And eventually it involves a technovirus that will kill biological matter. There's a machine called Saint. And I don't know who the actor is, but he plays this OCP executive, and he's the guy who wants Saint to take over Delta City, which now exists by this time. And he always says, Damien, remember to brush your teeth, or something like that, or waste not, want not. And he's always taking notes for no reason. And I just wonder if they just made that up for him to be goofy, because he's not a threatening villain. He's goofy as shit. But one of the coolest things they did is they cast a Canadian actor, Maurice, and I can't remember his last name, but he played Robocable. So John T. Cable was Murphy's partner, and Robocop gets hacked and has to kill him at the end of the first movie. And we get Robocable, who's Robocop in a dark blue/black sheen. He wields dual Auto 9s, which on the surface is fucking awesome. Yeah. And it's really cool to watch these movies. They're on Amazon Prime right now, so check them out. I watched them recently when I was in the hospital back in February. They're goofy as shit. The budget's not there, but it's RoboCop, and it's worth it for that alone. There is a new RoboCop video game in development. It's done by the same developers who did Terminator Resistance. Alex doesn't like that game. I do, because it's Fallout with a Terminator skin put on it. And if the developers loved the source material like they did for Terminator, because there's like things that tied into the greater film continuity, things that make it feel like an authentically Terminator experience. Like, you're not going to walk into a T-800 and expect to walk out of that fight alive if you're fighting them like 3 or 4 of them at a time. But the developer, I think it's called Rogue City, and it's supposed to come out in 2022 or 2023. The teaser trailer came out earlier last month. We don't know a lot about it, so I'm optimistic it won't suck, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't know, Aaron, what are your final thoughts on this?
My final thoughts are that at the very least, the first RoboCop film is very memorable for many different reasons. And if you think you remember it and haven't watched it in a long time, give it another watch, because you're probably going to get something out of it far different than what you remembered originally. Kind of like the difference between me as a kid watching it and going, oh my God, the violence is amazing, to as an adult going, the subversiveness is amazing in this. And I think RoboCop 2 follows along on that. I can't say much for RoboCop 3 in that regard, and I didn't watch the remake. So, I shouldn't comment on that, but I'm saying, like, at least the first 2 RoboCop films, I think they're definitely worth watching again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for this edition of Future Imperfect. You're going to hear me and Aaron doing a lot of these over the next month, as it's me and Aaron in charge of Future Imperfect and Loose Cannon. So
I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge.
So coming up on the show on Wednesday for Loose Cannon, we're going to keep going with the sci-fi theme, and we're going to take a look at Full Moon Pictures' 6 movies, though I'm only making Aaron watch the first 3. We're going to be talking about the Trancer series by Charles Band, starring Tim Thomerson as Trooper Jack Death as he hunts down these zombie-like creatures in the 23rd century and beyond. Also featuring a very young Helen Hunt in her first leading role.
Oh, so, can I give a teaser? Can I give a teaser for Trancers already?
Oh, yes.
Helen Hunt wears a Confederate flag jean jacket. That did not age well.
Oh, oh dear God.
No, and you know what? Believe it or not, I am really enjoying Trancers. I was watching it this afternoon, and I remember having seen it before. So, but I don't remember many details about it. It's just one of those, I obviously saw it on HBO, Cinemax, Showtime kind of thing as a kid, and yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about. And to give you a little bit of a spoiler for next week on Future Imperfect, because Aaron writes Battletech. I've played Battletech, but mostly with a controller in my hand, very rarely with a mini or a character sheet. We're going to talk Battletech, and we're going to ask Aaron the question, how do you get someone into an IP with lore so deep where do you start? So we're going to talk about all things Inner Sphere, the Clan, the Succession Wars, and who knows what else. Maybe those Somerset Strikers. We'll talk.
Hey, nothing wrong with those guys.
So we will be talking about all that and more right here on Future Imperfect, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. So for the Starship Future Imperfect, we have been
Aaron Pollyea.
I've been Mike the Birdman saying, well, Alex, why don't you take us out?
My friends call me Murphy. You call me Robocop.